Speaker.
Call the member for Moggill.
Well, Mr Deputy Speaker, the member for Bancroft may carry on about the Turnbull government, but can you imagine if Bill Shorten becomes Prime Minister of this nation? And you can imagine the significant risks that there would be to our economy here in Australia. Significant risks. We would have absolute chaos, higher debt and deficit under a Shorten-led Labor government in Canberra. And, Mr Deputy Speaker, what those opposite should be concentrating on is their upcoming state budget. The Labor-Palaszczuk government in the next few months really needs to implement an integrated road and public transport plan in the western suburbs of Brisbane. In my electorate of Moggill, we have increasing road congestion, which has been significant for a long period of time. And when we think that Labor has been in power for 24 of the past 29 years, they've had no plans for the western suburbs of Brisbane. They need to look at this urgently, to concentrate on traffic congestion, not only in Moggill but also the other electorates which are in the western suburbs, design solutions and then implement funding collaboratively with other levels of government to resolve these issues. They also need to work on educational infrastructure, and particularly in relation to Kenmore State High School's infrastructure master plan. There are parents and students who are there, teachers, members of the P&C and the school council who constantly talk to me about the need for an investment in Kenmore State High School's infrastructure master plan. We also have primary schools that are in urgent need of an infrastructure investment, and also there's the need for an additional high school which services not only suburbs in the Moggill electorate but also in the member for Ipswich West electorate as well, and I know that he has been individually as a private member actually supportive of that. There are cost of living pressures related to electricity, car registration, fuel, food, health and education, and there are concerns, real concerns, about the 5 new taxes that the Labor government is implementing here in Queensland, and they're also concerned about jobs. And the Palaszczuk Labor government, again, Mr Deputy Speaker, can talk about jobs, but with an unemployment rate in Queensland of 6.2%, we certainly need greater plans to deal with that. Mr Deputy Speaker, in my remaining time, I'd like to return back to the federal coalition government, and I've heard the Deputy Premier this week talk about remote Indigenous housing. Well, the Deputy Premier needs to stop playing politics with Indigenous remote housing and negotiate with the Commonwealth in good faith, because the federal coalition government has invested $1.3 billion in Queensland through the remote housing strategy over the last decade. So rather than the Deputy Premier coming in here and tabling Facebook posts in a puerile and facile manner, what the Deputy Premier needs to do is to negotiate with the Commonwealth. The state Labor government needs to step up here in Queensland, needs to step up like the Northern Territory, step up and negotiate with the Commonwealth. So rather than picking fights with the federal coalition government, what we need is collaborative work between our state Labor government here and the Commonwealth to deliver for remote housing.
Thank you, member for Moggill.
Mr Deputy